We have a discussion now about some specific examples of the kinds of things that we've been talking about today with three panelists, and the moderator for this session will be Chris Holcomb, who is also one of the students from the PRP this year at the LBJ School.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Chapman. Hi, I'm Chris, and welcome to our discussion on transparency and application development. Our panelists will be looking at some real useful and real cool things citizens and nonprofits can do when we have available and open data. Sitting to my left is Damien Brockmann. He works during the day as a legislative director for State Representative Rafael Anchia. During the night, presumably, he works on his website, billhop.com, a terrific legislative wiki and social networking website designed to help people understand and participate in the legislative process. Sitting to his left is Eric Gundersen. Eric Gundersen's from D.C., and he's the president of Development Seed, an online strategy shop in Washington, D.C. Recently, he's been doing some really righteous things with data. He's been mapping food security projects in Africa, developing the intranet at the World Bank for their international communications team, and building decentralized data collection tools to survey public health organizations' capacity to respond to flu outbreaks. Finally, we have Conor Kennedy sitting on Eric's left. Conor Kennedy is Conor Kenny. I think I've done that about 5 times already. Conor Kennedy is the senior editor at... All right, let's do it again. Conor Kenny is the senior editor at OpenCongress.org, a free, open-source, nonpartisan website that brings together government data with news, wiki reporting, blog coverage, and public comments to give the real story behind what's happening in Congress. This is a joint project between the Sunlight Foundation and the Participatory Politics Foundation. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 presentations so they can describe some really cool stuff. And after that, we have one pre-planned question. We'll open it up to Q&A. Would you like to start, Damien?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Well, as Chris mentioned, my project is billhop.com. It's something I've been working on for the last 3 years. Just started as something I dreamt up in grad school, and then started working on as I got involved in state politics here at the Texas Capitol. And as I got involved in the issues at the Capitol and wanted the rest of the world to understand what we were working on, I thought using web tools like a wiki and blog would be something that'd be good to develop. And this past year, I've launched a new version of BillHop. Let's see here. It's a legislative wiki and social networking website designed to help people understand and participate in the legislative process, provide background information to legislation, allow people to connect with one another. Right now, the website is active for Texas, California, Maryland, and Congress. I've beta tested it for these other states, and I'm about to relaunch for North Carolina, Arizona, Ohio, Minnesota, Washington. I want to continue to expand it. The goals of the site, as I've mentioned, is to provide additional context and information about the legislative process. Right now, in your best state legislative websites, you can get information about bills, the authors, where they are in the process. There's usually some legislative jargon that most common folks may not understand, as far as the amendment was tabled. The committee substitute was offered, and so the goal of having a wiki is to have people who know the process be able to provide additional context about what's actually going on and who's doing what behind the scenes. And so, on to the second goal there, I want to extend the awareness of issues and the legislative process to non-participants. And I see my website as being different things for different types of people. There are people who are insiders like myself who work on the inside, and I talk to lobbyists, talk to other legislators to make legislation happen. And I can talk using this website, share information with fellow staffers and other folks who are involved in the process, and we all speak the same language. But I'd like to move outside that circle to people who are politically involved, but want to know more about what's going on what's going on in the legislature. I want to move outside that circle where people may not even be aware that there is a state legislature. They're not even aware that there are bills. And I want to use the website to reach out and make people aware that they should be aware and just to start asking questions. Another goal of my website is to connect people. So if I'm working on legislation here that deals with school-based health centers, I can see if someone's doing a project in Maryland or someone's entered information or commented on information on a bill in Maryland, and I can email that person and say, hey, what are you guys doing in Maryland? I'm trying to do this in Texas. Let's connect. And then I'm interested in creating tools for viral activism. And this is a term that I've made up myself. I'm not sure if it's out there, but right now activism seems to be very focused on a single issue, a single organization. Public Citizen will have their email lists, their website, and the bills that concern them. And as a result, you kind of create a common culture of people who subscribe to those emails. Well, I want to reach out and use people's interest in one issue to make them aware of other issues that they may not even know exist or have an opinion on. For example, someone may go to the website looking for abortion bills, and might be very concerned about have a pro-life stance, and want to push a certain bill, and then through the website they become aware of other legislation and might become interested in CHIP or healthcare for children. So I want to break free of this of the way that activism currently exists, where it's through one organization and one culture of people, and I want to make people sort of break through their ideological bounds. So I'll just walk you through the website and how it works. This is a simple bill page. When you look up a bill, my website pulls the information off of the state database or the congressional database, pulls the actual bill text of the bill, and I have a sort of a simple way that you can step through the process, so that if you just click, right, that's the House version of the bill. If you step back one version, you can go to the committee version, you can go back to the introduced version. It kind of walks you through how close it is to passing. I offer a wiki where people can contribute to whatever they know about the bill. You can add titles and tags to those bills, comments on the bills. And I try to I'm working on offering additional tools so that people who are not aware of, who don't want to take the time or don't know all the context behind a bill and don't want to add to the wiki, you can add other things. You can add video that's on YouTube or on news websites. This is a recent video. It's a really interesting video of a committee vote on the floor on voter ID. People can upload documents from other websites. And just to prevent people from uploading erroneous documents, the website checks. It has to come from an existing website, a PDF file from, for example, the Supreme Court or from the Brennan Center in Washington, D.C. And so these are documents that are then placed on the page with the bill. I've got tracking tools. Users can rate a bill as unfavorable or conservative, liberal, and they rate that information is aggregated and placed on the website, so you can see what users consider to be liberal bills, unfavorable bills, conservative bills, etc. This bill tracking, you can track by certain categories that you make up. And I just launched. Oh, not yet. I'll get there. You can also add action items. This is a new item I've added in like the last month or two. That you can add an action sheet to the bill to call other people to action. So if anybody comes across the bill, they say, call Chairman Berman this week to ask him to have a hearing on this bill. And you can create a campaign to which users can subscribe, and every time someone adds another action item to that campaign, they can email about it. Again, I'm trying to contribute to this idea of viral activism. All right, there's a social networking tool for for the website. And I just added this week. It's a Facebook application. I'm trying to extend the site to other third-party sites. And so you can take your tracking list and publish it on your Facebook account, and then even comment on those bills, so that friends who are not aware of what you do, of the legislative process, of your interest in legislation, can see, hey, we just passed the green school standard for Texas. We just did that last night as an amendment to this bill. And so my friends would be like, what's that about? And send me an email, and just a way of sharing my experience with people who may not necessarily be aware, and getting them interested in the process. So finally, what we're looking to do in the future is I want to continue to extend the site to other states and levels of government, local, city, and national. And I want to take the legislative info that I scrape off of state websites and make it freely available through XML so that other people will be able to use that information. It's really a pain to scrape that information and to reprogram the site for each state. And I'd like to make that freely available, make that a service of my site. Again, I want to continue to ramp up participation and integration of the site into social network sites, blogs, and browsers. And that's it. I want to continue to develop tools for activism tracking. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Damien. Eric, would you like to throw it?
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Gary. All right. So we've talked a lot about open data. What does it actually look like here? There's a really good example back from the fall in Washington, D.C. The government said, hey, we've put out a lot of open data, and we want to see what people are going to do with it. So they had this competition, Apps for Democracy. The best way to think about this is kind of like an Iron Chef competition, which brings up the important question: how do you Iron Chef? So we're going to need some data, and which the DC government provided here. And along with that data, we're going to need some tools to do something with it. In this case, something like maybe Drupal, Mapnik, Rails. It all started here in this DC government website, which is just like a classic government website, listing out what information they had. This is the baking process. And here's some of the stuff that came out of it. Carpool site in DC. Historic tours. And parking meter finder, find out what parking meters are broken. These are all mashups. Combining open source tools along with open data. I had the privilege of getting to work on actually two of the sites in the competition. One was called Outside in DC. The company I work at, Development Seed, we all bike to work, so it was important for us to have a bike commuter site. And DC government had some really neat bike data, and so we wanted to show the different routes. We wanted to show theft of bikes, and also get a Craigslist feed of new bikes coming in. So you can get a sense here. Alongside, we're sucking in news from Twitter. You can see that these really custom maps. All those map shape files are from the DC government. So we've got waterways, parkways, different lines for different bike paths, metro maps. And then you can see the crime dots around the area. Every morning we go out to the DC site and get the latest dump of crime data from the government, untar it, and parse out the CSV file and identify everything associated with bike theft. Like I said, we built these with open source tools, and we got a little ahead of schedule. So we ended up being able to also build another site called StumbleSafely.com, which focuses on the bars around our office. The main goal here is obviously to allow you to get a sense of crime activity around your preferred place of drinking. And being able to filter based on your preferred time of drinking, whether that's daytime, evening, or night. Like the bike site, we grab custom shape files from the DC government. Some of the extra add-ons here, we grab building footprints, which allowed us to really make the map look different. Also, the Alcohol Beverage and Control Board had their data in a shapefile, so we turned that into a heat map here, so you can see the glowing bar districts, and we called a couple of our preferred locations out on top of that. And then you can see the filtering of this is actually where we have a lot of meetups for the Drupal community in town, and then you can see the assault right next to it. Using the exact same aggregation tools, again, every morning between 8 and 9, somebody in the DC government uploads a report of crime from the day before, and we're able to parse out on keywords and filter out based on time. So what's interesting about this is when we were getting an award from Kundra here and the mayor. Here's one of our lead developers, Jeff and Bonnie, talking to Vivek. We found out something kind of crazy from the city comptroller that the police were actually using Stumble safely. I mean, the joke is, I'm not sure the D.C. government would have been able to pay for a bar site and sold that one, but of course they are, right? I mean, data visualization matters. And what do you call something like this? I mean, this is a classic positive externality, right? Just as a beekeeper is just focused on his bees, those bees end up going out and taking care of the entire farming sector. Government needs to focus on getting the data out there and letting us as a community figure out what to do with it, and amazing things will happen there. Which brings up the question of a more effective, which brings up the point of a more effective government. Let's take a look at maybe, like, what if USAID started doing this and their programs on the ground expose their data in a certain way? Well, one, USAID would know where they're all working. Businesses in the U.S. would be able to, in real time, access some of this data and would be a little safer. Right now, that is not possible based on how slow it is to access information. So it begs the question of, if open data, with open data, can we really talk about extending a production possibility frontier of efficiency within organizations here, right? And this is a valid question. If all inputs are the same, can you add open data to a mix and actually increase the good happening within government? So seriously, who's doing this, right? Some exciting news. 2 weeks ago, over 140,000 miles of road data was opened up from AfriCover, which is a branch of FAO, a food security organization in Rome under the UN, and put on OpenStreetMap, which is like the Wikipedia of maps. Now, this data is no longer locked away for just one organization. It is out there for all these other organizations to start working with. That is a huge efficiency gain. To get a sense of what that looks like, here we are, Congo, 92,000 miles added. Tanzania, 17,000. Rwanda. I mean, this is real change here. And Burundi last. So there's a total of 140,000 square miles. And, bringing up, well, hey, how did this data get up there? Well, somebody, Robert Soden, who I work with, ended up blogging, asking for interns. And 4 interns ended up working over the course of 3.5 months, putting it up there on the OpenStreetMap infrastructure. So let me just wrap up, ending on a point of infrastructure. Openness without access is going to be a problem. It's not going to give us the kind of returns we're hoping for. So folks that might have been to the U.S. Census data, they expose all these fabulous shapefiles. And let me speed up a little. But the problem is these great shapefiles that we could make other Stumble Safely's and outside NDCs, they're huge. It's 125 gigs of data. This is hard to work with. So after a frustrating experience on a project, it is a pleasure to announce today that all of that data is now hosted by Amazon.com, effective this week. We will be blogging this next week for free. And Amazon has crazy tools in the cloud, such as these virtual hard drives that can then mount to their virtual machines that can allow you to work on this in real time, export your work product like base map layers out, and actually host them in the cloud. This is drastically lowering the barrier to entry. And actually being used in real time. Here's an image of the open data from Tiger for educational boundaries being used on febp.newamerica.net. So let me wrap up there, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Eric. Are you ready, Connor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this is additionally kind of a nuts and bolts, or it's rather an illustration of what the possible is and what has been done, and good ideas, hopefully inspiring ideas rather than the nuts and bolts of it, because I am not a developer. This is applications government transparency, or openness. What is it good for? Not absolutely nothing. And I want to talk about 3 directions of exchange here. And I'm not just talking about exchange of information. I want to get to this point in a bit, but I actually disagree with Clay that participation is different than transparency. I think there's a lot of overlap actually there. So, of course, there's government to people, government releasing information. This is what we all think of as transparency. But then there's this collaborative stuff. There's a back and forth, and there's actually working together for a common goal. And then there's actually, we've discussed some examples here, the government adopting models that have actually come from outside the government in ways that they would have never thought of. And I have a bunch of different websites I'm about to scroll through, and I have all these links online, so don't worry about writing any of them down. So for the government to people model, the first is collected data and research. Clay talked about the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency Administration, and this covers everything from census data and whatnot. But so the National Weather Service, that's their website. It's not very pretty, but it has a lot of data, and it makes things like the Weather Channel and AccuWeather.com available. These are much prettier, fancier websites. They do come with Coors Light and 0% interest, but that's capitalism, right? That's how they fund these nicer things. Well. The Weather Channel and specifically AccuWeather a couple of years ago was meditating on things, I assume, and figured out what the De Beers consortium had figured out a long time ago, that if something is scarce, it's a lot easier to sell it for more money. So like the De Beers, they kind of started getting together and thinking about things and decided to flex their muscles and got this guy, Senator Rick Santorum in D.C., to sponsor a bill that would actually force the NOAA to restrict the amount of information that they release to the public in a usable form, which is the very same information that made their work possible. So we're going to get back to this in a second. But I wanted to move on to information on politics and policy making. Louis Brandeis, sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. We say this every day. We meditate on it at Sunlight. I basically, by the way, work at the Sunlight Foundation with Clay and John in D.C., so I feel like I'm obliged to offer this quote every presentation. So we develop a bunch of tools to both use data sets and create new data sets as well. So in the realm of political information, there's things like OpenSecrets.org, which covers lobbying information, revolving doors, campaign contributions. Here you see Citigroup's campaign contributions. So we use information that's given. We also use information that we just go out and take. This is Party Time, which catalogs all of the political fundraisers and lobbyist firms in D.C., because that information, unless a fundraiser actually physically touches a check, they are not required to disclose at all that they were involved in raising all that money for you. You might remember the Bush Rangers and Pioneers and the, I don't remember what Kerry called his guys. But so we actually get these invitations leaked to us, and then we put them into a database and we put them up online. We also have information that we gather because it's not in a very good form. This is OpenCongress, which is an amalgamation of a lot of different data sets, but the primary reason we built it is that Thomas, which many of you are probably familiar with, sucks, and so we built a better one. And this is actually what I work on mostly, so that's me. And then we have more putting data sets together. This is MapLight, which actually looks at the confluence of influence and also things like media mentions of support or opposition for things and campaign contributions and votes to kind of track how influence is going in D.C. And then we have Subsidy Scope, which is taking a lot of different horrible data sets, and what we're trying to do now is actually build a comprehensive picture of all of the corporate subsidies in America at every level of government. We're starting at the federal level. So we already have some data sets in there. So this is the information that shows us how policymaking decisions are made, how politicians get elected. This is key for citizen oversight. So citizen oversight, right? Back to Rick Santorum. This is his bill. It's the National Weather Service I can't even read that, something Act of 2005. This is his bill. You could go read it on OpenCongress, and on Open Secrets you can go and find out that the AccuWeather guys gave Rex Santorum a lot of money, including right after he dropped his bill. This is something that was noted in his wiki profile on OpenCongress, the OpenCongress wiki. It's right there in Rick Santorum's profile. And it was also something that was noted in the media. And I like this slide in particular because it's got an embedded weather forecast that comes off the NOAA data right there in the display. And that's the highlighted part, and it's one of the top 20 reasons to vote against Rick Santorum, according to the Philadelphia City paper. Perhaps as a consequence, there's many different moving parts here. You can see that under sponsor, there's just Rick Santorum there. And if you look under bill actions, it got referred to committee, which is where bills go to die, and very few ever come out. So no action was really taken on the bill, and Rick Santorum had to say bye to Congress a short while later. Now, to what degree this is a function of that particular thing, we won't say, but we'd like to say that it was perhaps because of his opposition to transparency. So moving into a third category is actually information on government services and operations. And so this is everything, all the information that's generated by the operation of the government, more like the bureaucracy. So the number one rule of the internet is, it's not, well, it could be don't listen to Nigerian finance officials. But it's basically that you're not the smartest person in the room. You are not going to be the smartest person to be able to figure out how to deal with this information, what the best way to come up with this stuff. This unbelievable website on StumbleHome I can really use because with the internet, the room has gotten a lot bigger. Everybody, the smartest person in the room now could be the smartest person on the planet that can deal with this stuff. Examples of the use of this stuff, this is started out as the Chicago crime map, which is now integrated into every block. This is very similar to the data sets that Eric was talking about. And then the DC government does a fairly poor job of doing the same thing, but it's there. And this is actually centered where I live. This is all the crime that has happened around my house in the last 3 months. I live in a somewhat sketchy neighborhood, and I actually use this specifically to plot the way home from the bar at night, and it's amazing, varying your route block to block. All the muggings seem to happen on the same blocks. It's very crazy. So I hadn't seen that website before, but it's definitely a lot more useful and pretty than this. So I'm going to start using that. And then another example of that would be the information collected by government. So these are SEC filings. Collected by the SEC, and this website was actually built by a guy named Carl Malmood, who is a total punk rock, transparency, open government guy. If you don't know him, you got to look up more about him, because what he did is he got a National Science Foundation grant. He built this Edgar database of all these filings that you could not get online. You had to go to Wall Street or go to DC and get the actual, sit in a reading room. So he put it all online, got everybody used to it, and then he said, hey, my funding's running out. I'm going to take this offline unless the SEC decides to adopt it. And what are you going to do now? And then there was this huge uproar, and the SEC is like, okay, well, maybe we should really start using this. So the SEC hadn't thought of this. Carl Malmood didn't. I have a bunch more links on the site which point to other things that he's done. And the latest, he's actually running for the DC office, the Public Printer of the United States. And trying to do a bunch of things. One of the things he's done recently is law libraries. Legal decisions, court cases are basically not available to the public. They're available through really expensive online databases, which seems kind of antithetical to democracy. So he and some other people got a trial subscription to some of these extreme databases, and over the space of a weekend downloaded like 100,000 pages of these things and then put them up on their own database. So I highly recommend that you go check more of it out. I've got his Twitter feed on there. It's also great. Okay, this is interestingly formatted. Let's see. So that is government to the people and things that we can do with that information. So getting to a collaborative model, this is a peer-to-patent project at the United States Patents and Trademarks Office. And originally you had some people sitting around a room trying to figure out if a patent is original, and I think as John Wendelick said, with the internet we're able to tap into the long tail of expertise in the country, which is really not in DC for many things. So what they're able to do here, this is a particular patent for something, and the first discussion there, I think, is some guy saying, did these guys actually do any work on this? I'm not convinced that there's any original work here whatsoever. So they put these patents up and say, hey, do these people deserve to get this patent? And allow anybody who has these expertise to go in and really kind of tear it apart and see if it deserves it. Another example of the collaboration model, and we touched on this a little earlier, this is an amazing project called The Future of Melbourne. and they had a strategic plan for their city. I think it was like their smart growth plan or something like that. They did it every 10 years for the city, kind of determine their zoning, overall strategic vision. And this great, amazing guy named Mark Elliott convinced them to put it up on a wiki and put it up not for public comment, but actual for public editing and participation over the course of 1 month. And they produced an amazing amount of stuff, and it wasn't just people in Melbourne, it was also people from around the world, including there's apparently this one guy in Helsinki that really likes their bike lanes in Helsinki. And he's, some Finnish guy, and I mean, he really likes the bike lanes there, and he uploaded all these diagrams and pictures explaining how these are really great. This is now integrated into the Melbourne City Plan. And the interesting thing about this is that by inviting the public participation in, first of all, the government there thought it was a great success, and they're going to be doing it again. And by inviting them in, Mark said that one of the things that happened is that the plan got a lot more green than it was originally, a lot more environmentally friendly. So that's kind of citizen influence, kind of shifting policy in a direction. But another thing that it did is they were so bowled over by how amazing it was that instead of every 10 years, they're going to do this every 2 years now, and they're going to be posting it up online and doing this because they're able to get so much work done, and instead of filing comments and then responding to them after a period, so you can not only change the outcomes but also change the entire process itself. Finishing up here. And then other than a collaboration mode, there's a little more confrontational mode, which I call the Get Satisfaction model. Get Satisfaction is a website that is basically a third-party customer service in which people can call and or people can log in and post complaints and questions. And it basically creates pressure on generally corporations to come and answer the complaints on their site. If you get enough of them on there, you can see there's a little happy meter down at the bottom that kind of shows how happy people are with the site. So it's a very interesting kind of pressure model or a shaming model. These amazing people in the UK called My Society, who do a number of really awesome stuff that I have all the links for, did this thing called Fix My Street. Very similar thing. They had people upload pictures and locations of things like broken signs and potholes and things like that, and then they could track it. And this became so popular that many of the city councils started using it basically as a to-do list of things to fix, and they're actually shifted from a Get Satisfaction model to a collaborative model where they're doing active collaborations with city governments to kind of figure out what needs to be fixed. So finally, the last model here is from people to government, adopting outside models. This is fedspinning.org. This is a website that Sunlight funded, that the folks over at OMB Watch made. And this is a database of all of the federal grants and contracts that had gone out in a fiscal year, searchable and mappable. This is divided by congressional districts, so you can kind of see how earmarks flowed from Congress down to contracts. Now, when we had asked about this originally, the CBO said that it would cost $4 million to build, and then another, I think, $11 million or $7 million for the next 5 years after that. Our developers didn't think that was right, so we built this thing for $30,000, and then we turned the code over to the government, and they basically just copied the code and made usaspending.gov, and just, I mean, it's essentially the same website. So it's a great example of how you're not the smartest person in the room, and by releasing all the information that you have, you're really unlocking the possibilities. We've talked about absolute democracy here before, so that is a good thing that says wrap it up. And Fiend, so perfect. That's me. That's my Twitter feed. I just posted on my Twitter feed a link to the page that I have on the Open Congress Wiki that has all the links for things that I discussed, and you can also reach me at that email. The email is also on the page. My Twitter feed, by the way, I don't know if anybody else has this problem. If anybody can help me fix this, I'd be eternally grateful. It doesn't show up in searches, so my hashtags don't show up and everything. If anybody knows how to solve this problem, I've been banging my head against it. So you can't search for it, but if you enter that URL in specifically, you can find it.
All right. Thank you very much, Connor. All right, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and open up for a little bit of Q&A. So if you have a really terrific question, please raise your hand. You, sir? In the back?
My name is Jordan Koch. I'm a government web architect, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm sure most web architects in the government want to provide data for cool applications like y'all have been showing us today. What's the best way to get it out there? For giving it, to provide you a spot so that if you had a bar camp or a transparency camp or any other event where you want to knock out an application really quickly and easily, where would we make this data available? Do you want to go to our individual sites? Do you think government should set up a certain repository, like a SourceForge, like a GovForge site? What would be the best way? Because like the city of Austin's data architect mentioned earlier, there's got to be the standards to make it really quick and easy. Because I can make an application, the API is really challenging for y'all to use. So how are the standards going to be coordinated, and where's that going to be located? I just want to hear your suggestions.
So, not PDF. But yeah, no, we would love XML, RDF, some kind of RESTful API, but it's amazing to not get caught up so much in formatting all that. If it's in the interest of time, it's pretty cool how much you can parse just out of a CSV file. So that there are lots of good open formats, and having a variety of open formats to kick out once you build out your API shouldn't be too much of a worry. But there's a really wonderful O'Reilly book that Jeff, who I work with, had me read about RESTful web apps that really broke down some of the programmable ways to be able to go get at data. Because I've heard the same stories about some of the scrapers for some of these state sites. What, Neil Drum was working with you guys on Maplite, right? Oh man. So yeah, there's some really low-lying fruit to get at, and then also some dream projects of like XML, RESTful.
And just throw a bar camp, order pizza, people will show up. Pizza is key. We know from experience.
Do we have another question?
Maybe not a terrific question there, Chris, but a question nonetheless. I've been approached by several people here, even today, that, for example, are interested in Twitter or are interested in using these kind of applications. But there is, at times, maybe I wouldn't call it an intimidation factor, but maybe the fact of comfort level that prevents them. So maybe I'd just like for each of you to maybe share your backgrounds in terms of getting to the point where you were at, because obviously we're not all born developers or programmers. And in particular, if for Bill Hop, if Mr. Brockmann, if we could get you to maybe talk about your background, and if the rest of you could follow up on that one.
How it came to be comfortable with building this website and sharing it with...
Yes, given that you started out as a public servant, not necessarily as a developer, if I understood correctly.
That's true. I was a grad student in instructional technology, and I went into that field with a specific interest of cross-cultural learning and also in civic engagement. So it's been an interest of mine for quite some time. And then when I came to Austin in 2003, I worked in the legislature initially. And let me tell you, working in the Texas legislature is a very interesting experience. It's a whole other world in its own. And stepping out from the Texas legislature into Austin every day and just feeling the disconnect between the two places, it makes you want to do something about it. And so after that experience, I was in grad school, really focusing on civic engagement, cross-cultural education, and started thinking about how one would bridge that issue, address that issue, address that problem. And so I learned the theory behind it in grad school and slowly taught myself first HTML, CSS, PHP, MySQL, and JavaScript. And it's been 5 years in the making, and I'm done pretty well. I've taught myself. I'm not a computer science major by any stretch of the word. So.
Yeah, no, same. Just starting to play with tools. I mean, I'm an economist. I didn't do a single computer class. Going through school, picked it up after school. But what's really nice now is there are so many tools coming out that allow you to start doing some interesting analytics without having to do code, thanks to projects like we're talked about today. So you can really start just experimenting, getting your hands dirty with other people's applications, and not having to go through that very foundational point. And eventually, you'll get so excited you'll figure out how to do it better than other people. So.
I was a geek growing up, took a detour into politics, and have come back home.
All right, do we have time for one more question? Or do we have one more question? All right.
have a question for Damien Brockmann. On your website, which sounds really great, how do you get that out to the people that need to hear the data that you're collecting?
Right. Yeah, that's a major issue that needs to be addressed. I mean, right now it's sort of insiders are interested in this stuff, and we still use language that only insiders understand. And by working on the Facebook application and some browser applications, I'm going to try to broaden the reach of the project, so it's not just Bill Hopp and people who are interested in legislation. And something I need to continue to work on and think about. But I'm trying to integrate it into blogs, into Facebook and other.
But do the legislators actually read your stuff?
There are quite a few. I mean, I look at the emails of the folks who sign in, and quite a few lobbyists are concerned about what's on the website.
Good.
Thank you. Another question for Damien. We're talking about in legislation kind of a human process that we're trying to represent through data, and that data isn't always a fair representation. You have like committee markups and substitutes,
exactly.
And last minute called committee hearings. How can that be handled? Do we have to modify the processes to accommodate open data? What are your thoughts on that?
You're talking about qualitative data versus quantitative data, and
well, you're capturing data off the state site, which may or may not reflect what's actually happening in that committee.
And that's why I'm actually creating a different site outside of what's on the state website. And Texas has a great website, by the way. You should check it out. It's one of the best in the nation. But it doesn't provide that human element, and that's the whole purpose of making this a social networking wiki tool, where people provide a human element, a human story behind what's going on with the legislation. So that's my intent. And it's not just one. And hopefully, it's not just one person's impression, but you're aggregating multiple people's perspectives, through the wiki.
Okay, I believe in order to stay on schedule, we need to go ahead and call that it. I'd like to thank our panelists, and let's have some applause for them tonight.